Europe stands at a historic crossroads, a moment that will define not just its own future, but the direction of global politics for decades to come. The choices made now will echo through generations, shaping the continent's role on the world stage and determining how it navigates an era of growing uncertainty and competition. For much of the modern era, Europe has relied on its traditional ally, the United States, a partnership forged in the aftermath of war, built on shared democratic ideals, and cemented through decades of military and economic cooperation. The transatlantic bond has been a cornerstone of European security and prosperity. Yet in recent years, China has emerged as Europe's largest trading partner, offering vast economic opportunities and access to a rapidly expanding market. Chinese investment flows into European infrastructure, technology, and industry, promising growth, but also raising questions about dependency and influence. For decades, Europe managed to balance American security guarantees with the economic benefits of engagement with China. This delicate act allowed European nations to enjoy the best of both worlds, protection under the U.S. security umbrella and prosperity fueled by trade with the East. But the world has changed. The old certainties are fading, replaced by a new era of rivalry and realignment. The global order is being reshaped by forces beyond Europe's control, and the continent can no longer afford to sit on the sidelines. The rivalry between Washington and Beijing is intensifying, spilling over into every domain: technology, trade, military power, and even the rules that govern the international system. Each superpower seeks to pull Europe closer, making neutrality an increasingly difficult stance to maintain. As the pressure mounts, Europe is being forced to choose a side. This dilemma is creating visible fractures within the European Union as member states grapple with competing interests and visions for the future. Some nations lean toward the U.S., valuing security and shared values, while others prioritize economic ties with China. The diversity of opinion within Europe is striking. Each member state brings its own history, economic needs, and geopolitical outlook to the table. For some, memories of American support during the Cold War run deep. For others, the promise of Chinese investment is hard to ignore. This dilemma forces Europe to confront fundamental questions about its identity. Is it merely a collection of trading nations, bound together by economic convenience? Or is it a true political union, united by shared values, principles, and a common vision for the future? The answer to this question will determine how Europe responds to the challenges ahead. Will it prioritize economic growth and market access, or will it stand firm on its political ideals and democratic values? The debate is fierce, and the stakes are high. Aligning with the United States would reaffirm Europe's commitment to democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, principles that have long defined the Western alliance. Such a choice would strengthen transatlantic ties, but it could also come at a cost, jeopardizing lucrative economic relationships with China and potentially exposing European industries to retaliation or exclusion from the world's fastest-growing markets. On the other hand, siding with China might secure short-term economic gains, opening doors to investment and trade, but this path risks compromising Europe's core values and could undermine its credibility as a defender of democracy and human rights. The choice is not just about economics or security. It is about what kind of Europe will emerge in the 21st century. Will it be a passive player, shaped by the ambitions of others, or an active force, charting its own course and standing up for its principles? Europe's decision will shape not only its own destiny, but also the future of international relations. The world is watching to see whether Europe can forge a path that balances its interests and values, or whether it will be forced to choose between two competing giants. Inaction risks losing control of its destiny, turning Europe into a passive battlefield for the ambitions of others. The time for choosing is now, and the consequences will be felt far beyond Europe's borders. In today's rapidly shifting global landscape, Europe finds itself caught between two powerful forces: the enduring security guarantees of the United States and the growing economic allure of China. The U.S. has been a steadfast ally to Europe for decades, providing military protection and strategic support through NATO. Now, Washington is ramping up pressure on European nations, urging them to align more closely with American interests and to take a firmer stance against China's expanding influence. American officials emphasize shared democratic values, collective security, and the importance of standing together in the face of authoritarian challenges. They argue that only by presenting a united front Can the West safeguard its way of life and maintain global stability? From Washington's perspective, China's meteoric rise is not just an economic story, it's a direct challenge to the liberal democratic order that has underpinned peace and prosperity in the West since World War II. The US continually reminds Europe of the vital security umbrella it provides through NATO, urging European leaders to reduce their economic dependencies on China and to be wary of Beijing's intentions. Meanwhile, China is playing a different game. Leveraging its vast economic resources, Beijing offers European countries lucrative investments, access to its enormous consumer market, and opportunities for growth that are hard to ignore. However, these economic benefits come with strings attached. China expects European governments to remain silent on sensitive political issues, such as human rights and territorial disputes, in exchange for continued access and investment. This strategy has created powerful domestic constituencies within Europe, business leaders, politicians, and even segments of the public, who advocate for closer ties with Beijing, often prioritizing economic gain over political principles. As a result, China's sophisticated carrot-and-stick approach is sowing division within Europe, encouraging individual nations to pursue their own interests rather than presenting a unified stance. The continent now faces a complex balancing act, navigating between the security offered by the American umbrella and the economic opportunities dangled by the Chinese dragon. For decades, Europe has tried to walk a delicate tightrope, balancing its interests between the world's two largest powers, the United States and China. This balancing act, once seen as a sign of diplomatic strength and strategic autonomy, is now becoming increasingly untenable in today's rapidly shifting geopolitical landscape. The era of quietly navigating between Washington and Beijing is over. The rivalry between the US and China has escalated beyond mere competition. It has evolved into a direct confrontation, with both superpowers openly pressuring other nations, especially those in Europe, to pick a side and demonstrate clear loyalty. No longer can European leaders afford to remain on the sidelines or hope for a middle ground. The stakes are higher than ever, and the choices Europe makes now will shape its future for decades to come. Every economic decision is now intertwined with security implications. Whether it's trade, investment, or technology, Europe can no longer compartmentalize its relationships. The lines between economic prosperity and national security have blurred, forcing policymakers to rethink old assumptions. Relying on Chinese technology for critical infrastructure, while depending on the US for military protection, exposes Europe to significant vulnerabilities. These dependencies could be exploited in times of crisis, putting both economic stability and national security at risk. To safeguard its interests, Europe must now forge a new path, one that integrates economic and security strategies into a single, coherent vision. Only by doing so can Europe hope to maintain its sovereignty and influence in an increasingly polarized world. Europe's internal division is a significant vulnerability in the US-China rivalry. Member states have diverse approaches to China, often working at cross purposes. Eastern Europe is wary of authoritarian powers, while Germany prioritizes trade. France champions strategic autonomy, but consensus is lacking. This fragmentation paralyzes Europe's ability to act cohesively. Europe's economic ties with China have become a political vulnerability. China uses trade to exert political influence, turning economic dependence into control. European leaders face pressure from businesses reliant on the Chinese market. This dynamic forces Europe to mute criticism, trading political voice for economic stability. US policies against China often harm European industries. Extraterritorial sanctions force European companies to comply with American law. The Inflation Reduction Act disadvantages European manufacturers. These policies fuel the argument for European strategic autonomy. Europe's green transition depends on Chinese technology. China dominates the green tech supply chain, creating a strategic paradox. Europe's funds for green initiatives flow to its systemic rival. This dependency extends to critical minerals, with China controlling processing. Europe must choose between slowing its green transition or remaining dependent. Lithuania's defiance of China exposed EU vulnerabilities. China's economic retaliation aimed to divide Europe. The EU rallied behind Lithuania, but the incident highlighted the need for resilience. It was a wake-up call for Europe to build unity before a larger crisis. Europe faces a strategic choice: align with the US or pursue autonomy. Realignment with the US offers strength but risks economic decoupling from China. Strategic autonomy offers sovereignty but requires unity and resources. This decision will define Europe's role in the world and shape the global balance of power.